How the Spanish explored and colonized the Americas. Following Christopher Columbus's unintentional discovery of the West Indies in 1492, Spain was one of the first nations to explore and subjugate this newly discovered continent that would eventually be called the Americas. Columbus was sponsored by the Spanish crown to explore for new trade routes because the Ottoman Empire, a powerful nation, had long blocked European trade routes to the east by imposing high taxes. He believed he had landed in India when he first arrived in what is now known as the Bahamas. He first built a cordial relationship with the native populations while exploring the islands in search of riches, even though he also thought they would make excellent slaves and ought to be converted to Christianity. After reporting his findings to Spain, Columbus undertook 3 more expeditions to the New World, which was now recognized as distinct from India, since it had been discovered by Italian navigator Amerigo Vespucci, who also gave the continent its name. Viceroy of the Indies, Columbus was appointed, but he was later removed for mishandling the position. Still, his travels cleared the path for Spanish explorers. The Spanish established their first settlements in the Caribbean before moving to the mainland in 1508 and establishing Darien on the Panamanian Isthmus in Central America. From this location, several conquistadors set out on numerous expeditions to map and eventually subjugate most of South and Central America for Castil's use as their crown. In 1523, Vasco Núñez de Balboa founded Santa Maria la Antigua del Darien, the first permanent Spanish settlement on the American mainland. He also led the infamous Pacific March, becoming the first European to cross the isthmus and reach the Pacific Ocean from the New World. Conquistador Hernán Cortés was lured by tales of riches to what is now Mexico, where he subjugated the native Aztec people. The highly developed Mesoamerican civilization, known as the Aztecs, included several ethnic groups and city-states. The Aztecs were completely destroyed by smallpox, which the Spanish brought with them, and for which they lacked immunity, despite the Spanish having the upper hand in weaponry. Tenochtitlan, the capital of the Aztecs, was besieged for 30 days before Spanish forces took control and established Mexico City on the site. The sophisticated political and agricultural structure of the Inca civilization, which once ruled over the Andes, was subjugated by the Spanish. Even though they were outnumbered, the Spanish were able to take control because the country was in the midst of a civil war when they arrived. Atahualpa, the ruler of the Incas, was tricked by Francisco Pizarro, the conquistador, into attending an honorary dinner where his men opened fire on the unarmed people. After being taken prisoner and paid a ransom, Atahualpa was killed. This signaled the start of Spanish dominance, despite continuous Inca resistance, and Pizarro was appointed governor of all Inca territory. Other conquistadors also made their home in what is now Ecuador, Colombia, and Argentina. However, they had to fight the Portuguese for territory. Spain and Portugal came to an agreement under the terms of the Treaty of Tordesillas in 1494, giving Spain most of the South American territory it had conquered while Portugal claimed what is now Brazil. Aside from South America, other countries vying for control of the Americas were England, France, Holland, and Russia, who primarily headed north in search of gold to rival that found there. Despite leading multiple northern expeditions and even claiming Florida and California at one point, the Spanish endeavors to colonize the north were unsuccessful. Because other countries predominated, they were never able to establish a significant presence in Northern America. Over the course of 3 centuries of colonization, the Spanish would come to dominate South America despite their rivalry for territory with other nations. The Spanish monarchy, which governed Spanish colonies, instituted administrative procedures. In order to establish the viceregal system, viceroys from Spain were dispatched to rule Rio de la Plata, New Mexico, Peru, and New Granada in 1535. This systematic colonization was driven by both missionary zeal and a desire for wealth. Spain was keen to convert the native populations of the area to Catholicism. But in the 150 years that followed Columbus' discovery of the Americas, The native population of South and Central America fell by 80%. This was partly because of diseases that the European explorers brought with them, but it was also because their new overlords treated them poorly. Even though the Spanish crown tried to treat the native populations well, it was difficult to enforce this from a distance. Encomiendas were a kind of government in which native populations were left in the care of Spanish landowners in exchange for labor and tribute during the early decades of Spanish rule. But a lot of business owners misused the system. The encomiendas continued because of the widespread perception that native populations were inferior because they were not Christian, despite attempts by the Dominican and later Jesuit churches to protest against the cruelty. The European settlers also differed from one another. Because the majority of viceroys were of Spanish descent, they were seen as superior to Spaniards of American descent, which led to some animosity. There was tension at the period beyond that between Spanish colonists and Spanish ambassadors. Liberal concepts were also influenced by the French Revolution in Europe and South America. Because Spain was too busy fighting the Peninsular War in Europe to worry about its colonies, it formed juntas, or assemblies, to rule South America on behalf of the crown. Spanish colonies enjoyed the sense of independence this brought them. Due to all of this, Spanish colonies began to seek independence in the 19th century. The colonies in Peru, Ecuador, and Mexico all declared their independence in 1809. Except for Cuba and Puerto Rico, all Spanish colonies gained independence by the 1820s as a result of the movement's persistence throughout the other colonies. The British Empire, which enjoyed the thought of South American trade free from Spanish monopoly, supported them. After winning the Spanish and American War in 1898, the United States annexed Cuba and Puerto Rico, bringing an end to Spanish rule in the Americas. Even after Spain gained its independence, a large number of Spaniards left the country over the course of the following century in search of better opportunities, wealth, and territory in the Americas. The Spanish conquest of America left behind two legacies: the dominance it bestowed upon Spain during the Age of Discovery, and the population, goods, crops, and knowledge exchanged between the Americas, Europe, and Africa that came to be known as the Columbian Exchange. Even though Spain is no longer the dominant nation in the Americas, its influence can still be seen in the architecture, language, and culture it left behind. If you like the video, subscribe the channel and press the bell icon. Thank you for watching.